the best road venues, the best hyphenated names, and how did commitments get announced before Pat Narduzzi brought his Twitter account to Pitt? Answers to all those questions and more in the Morning Pitt Mailbag here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Friday, and you know what that means. It's time for the Morning Pitt Mailbag here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's like a Morning Pitt, like we do every other day of the week, except it's different because you provide the topics. You provide the questions. I'm so excited I can't even speak. You provide the questions throughout the week on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, and then on Friday we answer as many of them as we can, or as many as we want to, here in the Morning Pitt Mailbag on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Of course, you see the website below. Don't click it. That's just a picture. But you can follow those letters and type them into your search bar, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, if you want the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. It's all there at Panther-Lair.com. You never miss anything going on in Pitt sports at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And then, of course, we have our YouTube channel here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, where we ask you to like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you never miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Whether it's these daily morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday, or the live Panther-Lair show. We did that last night. Usually it's Wednesday nights at 8:30 p.m., but we moved it to Thursday just for this week. We'll be back to Wednesdays again next week. We did that last night, 8:30 p.m., me and Jim Hammett talking about everything going on in Pitt sports. And you don't want to miss that. And if we have to change the schedule, you want to make sure you're up to date on it. So subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss anything we do here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's Friday, like I said, so we do our mailbag edition. I always look forward to these. It's kind of fun. I mean, Monday through Thursday, I'm planning out topics, planning out what we need to talk about, how we're going to go about it. Friday, I just answer your questions, and I enjoy doing it. And we try to wrap up with some of the questions from the previous week, and there was one more I wanted to get to from last week. F. Pacharoni asks, and again, all these questions are on the message boards. So between Fifth and Forbes premium message board at Panther-Lair.com. Usually put out a call for questions on Tuesday or so, and everybody's kind enough to provide a bunch of questions for us. And so if you want to be part of the mailbag, you got to be on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Like F. Pacharoni is, he says, where has been your favorite away team venue? And this, there wasn't like there is kind of an obvious answer that jumps into the top of my head, but I decided to go through and figure out how many venues I've been to, how many places I've gone that I've covered a Pitt football game over the last 15 years or so. And I came up with 29. And I don't think I'm forgetting anyone, but 29 real quick, and I'm going to list these, and maybe you'll hear one that's missing and you'll be like, wait, you didn't go there? But I've been to West Virginia, Syracuse, Rutgers, Cincinnati, Connecticut, USF, Louisville, Notre Dame, Boston College, Virginia Tech, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Carolina, Duke, Miami, Wake Forest, Navy, UCF, Iowa, Penn State, Utah, Ohio. Remember Ohio, 2005? FIU, Yankee Stadium. I've covered a Pitt football game there. Might cover a second one this year. The Sun Bowl. Been there a couple times. Legion Field. The old gray lady in Birmingham. Been there more times than I would like to say. Charlotte. I forget what that is. That Bofa Stadium? I forget what that state. Or Bank One. I don't care. TCU. Because TCU Stadium was the host of the Armed Forces Bowl. I think that was TCU Stadium when Pitt played Houston. Remember that? That was a good time. And then the Peach Bowl. So whatever that stadium's called, Mercedes-Benz Magic City Stadium or whatever it's called. So those are the 29. No, I didn't go to Clemson. Either of the two times Pitt played down there. I did not go to Florida State when Pitt played down there in 2020. So those are two. And I didn't go to NC State when Pitt played there in 2009. So as far as ACC schools, those are the three I have not been to. I was at all those old Big East schools. I never got to Temple, right? That was right around the time when I started covering the team was the end of Temple's tenure in the Big East. But I can't think of anyone else that I've forgotten. For best place that I've gone to cover a game, I mean, Mercedes-Benz Magic City Stadium in Atlanta it's awesome. I mean, it's it's not brand new anymore, but it sure felt like it was brand new 2 years ago when Pitt played in the Peach Bowl down there. It was and it was beautiful. I mean, it was an amazing stadium. It's a great setup, and it's exactly what you would expect out of a state-of-the-art facility like that. Yankee Stadium had a pretty good, Yankee Stadium had a good food spread. I mean, I'll say that. Everything else about Yankee Stadium was bad. It was an open-air press box in the middle of December in the Bronx. You tell me if you think that's a good idea. You try to type on your computer with your bare hands because they gave us, the bowl gift for the media was a scarf and a hat. Well, that didn't help my fingers that were freezing as I was trying to type in, again, late December in the Bronx in an open-air press box. Plus, baseball stadiums, I mean, if you're covering the game, baseball stadiums suck for football. I mean, they are just, it's bad because where you're sitting in the press box, you're sitting in the baseball press box, which is behind home plate. That never gives you kind of a horizontal view of the stadium. You're inevitably sitting behind an end zone, and it's terrible. It's an awful way to cover a game. It's impossible. It's not impossible, but it's really unpleasant trying to cover a game from an end zone, which was probably one of the downsides at Mercedes-Benz Magic City Stadium, is that we were kind of down near the end zone in our section of the press box where we were seated. But I digress. I've always liked Georgia Tech, but that's just because I like being in Atlanta. TCU Stadium was pretty nice. FIU was... FIU... the opposing coaches and radio were on the roof. We walk in, and that was just where those guys had to go. And we walk in to cover it, media. We're walking down this hallway of suites, and it's beautiful. It's recently redone. I'm like, this is so nice. Look at this place. This is amazing. This is going to be one of the nicest stadiums I've ever covered a game in. I can't wait to sit here through a lightning delay, which is ultimately what happened, during which I think Dave Wanstead, now this was like 2014, I want to say that they played at FIU. Yeah, I think it was 14. Dave Wanstead, during the lightning delay, went on and railed against Steve Peterson, if you recall. But anyway, so we're walking down the suites, this row of suites, this hallway of suites, and I'm like, this is amazing. Press box is right at the end of this hall. Can't wait to get down there. This is going to be great. I walk into the press box, and there's 2 couches. That was where we sat. Maybe 4 couches. Me, Jerry DePaula, I forget if Sam Werner might have been there. We sat on couches. They fed us. They had a big cardboard box full of sausage McMuffins. Not sausage egg McMuffins, not sausage biscuits, sausage McMuffins. An English muffin with a sausage on it. I don't even know if it had cheese. I was like, this is pretty bad. But I digress. Best place to cover a game, best place to go to a game, best place to watch a game, best place for a game is Notre Dame. I mean, Notre Dame is the top of the line in everything. The press box is really nice. The food spread is great. You do have to put up with some of the lower rent donors being in the press box with you. Like if they haven't donated enough money to get into their own box or get into the AD's box or wherever else, they stick them in the press box because the press box is huge. It has more seats than they could ever need for a game, unless it was like, I mean, probably Notre Dame, Michigan fills up pretty good. But they'll put the low rent donors in there, the off-brand donors in the press box. So you do have to deal with that. But when it's a game like the 2008 game and there's like a child crying behind you because of the way the game is going, that's a little more amusing. It adds a certain element to it. But Notre Dame's a great place to watch a game. It's a great place to cover a game. It's probably my favorite road venue, I would say. And Pitt's playing out there this fall. So if you have an opportunity to go, you should. And I'm still deciding if I'm going to make that trip. But long-winded answer, but that's what I would say. All right, getting into some questions from this week. Smenges says, you used to refer to the site as Panther-Lair. So my question is, who is the best hyphenated last name player during the Panther-Lair era? And also, why did it change to Panther-Lair? I started saying dash instead of hyphen because it's 1 syllable as opposed to 2. And I'm into the whole brevity thing, man. As far as hyphenated names, I mean, there's Rafael Rujo Lopes, but the best hyphenated name has to be Lorad Stevens Howling, right? I mean, he came to Pitt as Lorad Stevens, but he became Lorad Stevens Howling early in his career. I think before he even started. I don't think he ever played a season as Lorad Stevens. I think he added the Howling at the end. But that's the one that would come to mind for me as the best. There might be another one I'm not thinking of, but I'm going to shout out Larod there. Turek44 says, one comment and then my question. Comment last week, you said something to the effect of, I do not do crystal balls or future casts because I'm an adult. That's one of the funniest things I've heard you say on the podcast. Appreciate it. And then question, I asked ChatGPT to list the closest Power 5 programs to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The list provided plus Cincinnati would be Cincinnati, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, Pitt, Rutgers, Syracuse, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia. Hypothetically, if such a conference ever existed, where would Pitt typically fall in that group of schools? Let's pretend the conference plays 9 annual conference games. All right, how many schools is that? Cincinnati, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State, Pitt, Rutgers, Syracuse, Virginia, Virginia Tech, West Virginia. 12 teams. Well, first of all, I would say I love that conference. I think it'd be a lot of fun to cover a team that plays in that conference. It'd be a lot of fun for Pitt to play those teams, playing West Virginia, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State on an annual or semi-annual basis. I think will be a lot of fun. I think when you look at that rundown, right? Those 12 teams. For pretty much, so I think you would have, best way to say this. I think for 9 out of those 12 teams, the goal would be to get into the top 5. All right, because I think you're probably I'm probably assuming Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State are going to be 3 of the top 5 schools every year. The competition for Cincinnati, Maryland, Michigan State, Pitt, Rutgers, Syracuse, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia, those other 9 schools, is to be among that top 5. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be 4 and 5. Maybe some year you could be 2, some year you could be 1, some year you could be 3. But you want to be among that top 5. I think Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State out of that group are perennially going to be top 5 in that conference of 12. The goal is to get into that top 5 with those 3 teams and sort of stay there. I think Pitt, out of those 9 programs we're talking about, Pitt, maybe Michigan State, currently would be positioned well to kind of have a semi-permanent role among the top 5, along with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, which I think is where you would want to be. You would want to kind of hang out in that top 5, top 6. You would want to be a top half school, all right? You would want to be in the top 6. So if you assume Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, say for those other 3 spots of the top half, I think Pitt, Michigan State should be there pretty much all the time. And then it's a matter of, can Virginia get its act together? Can Virginia Tech get its act together? Can West Virginia get its act together? Can Maryland get its act together? Can Cincinnati bounce back again? Can Syracuse and Rutgers ever figure it out? I think all of those teams, Cincinnati, Maryland, Rutgers, Syracuse, Virginia, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, have bigger question marks than Pitt and Michigan State when it comes to putting themselves in the top half of this proposed conference or this hypothetical conference. So where would Pitt typically fall in that group of schools? I think top half. I think top 5. With, and then we get back to sort of what we always say kind of year to year with Pitt, that if you're Pitt, with the way Pitt typically recruits and develops, you kind of build through cycles, and you want to peak at the right time. You want to peak like in 2021, where you've got that quarterback who can take you over the edge. You want to peak with the rest of the roster around him. And so during that peak year, if you can time it up right and everything kind of comes together, you can compete to win this conference, to be a top 2, top 3, top 1 team in this hypothetical conference, hanging out in the top 5, top 6 in those other years when you're tapering down from the peak or building back up to it. So I think that's probably where you would see Pitt fit. That's where I would see Pitt fitting in with that group, and it'd be a lot of fun. H2P Brandon says there's a long way to go until December signing. Are there any guys that we've missed out on that we're still pushing heavily for? Any insight on how communication styles and recruitment changes once it turns to trying to flip a guy? So rather than name names, I'll talk about sort of generally what happens after a recruit commits. Now, there are ways it could go wrong. Coaches could take it personal. The recruit might not handle it the best way. And that is what it is. I think in most situations, what you see happen, or what will happen, is the coaches simply maintain the relationship. There's nothing gained in burning those bridges. Whereas there is a potential reward for maintaining the relationship and continuing the relationship. And it doesn't have to be heavy recruiting pressure. You keep sending them graphics. You keep reaching out. How'd your game go this week? Who do you guys have this week? How'd you play? How's your mom doing? Happy birthday to your dad. How's your little brother? Love to get you out to a game sometime. You pull back on the heavy recruiting and you maintain the relationship with three possible outcomes. One possible outcome is nothing ever comes of it and they sign with their school that they committed to. It's 4 possible outcomes, all right? Nothing ever comes of it. Outcome number 1, nothing ever comes of it. They stay committed to that school and they sign with that school and that's it. Outcome number 2, nothing ever comes of it. They stay committed to the school, they sign with that school, and then a year or 2 later they go in the transfer portal and they've got that relationship that they can pick back up with you. Outcome number 3, they decommit from their school and you're in position to get back involved. And when they decommit from their school, you don't have to do a lot of, work to make up ground because you've been maintaining that relationship. It doesn't have to be like, hey, heard you decommitted, let's start talking again. No, it's, hey, we've been reaching out to you for the past 12 weeks. Every week we talk. So this is nothing new. Nothing's going to change when you decommit, And then option number 4 is that you get close to signing day and you make one last push and say, listen, let's come out and have an in-home visit, and let's talk about Pitt. Let's see if we can try and convince you to come back. Those are the 4 options. There's no real downside to maintaining the relationship. Whereas I think burning the bridges, you eliminate all 4 of those possibilities, or lessen the chances for all 4 of those possibilities. So I think that's what happens after a kid commits to another school is just keep talking to them. Keep that relationship up. Be genuine in what you've told him all along, which is that you want what's best for him and you want to see him grow and develop as a young man and as a football player and all this stuff. Maintaining the relationship, continuing to talk, continuing to communicate, that all feeds into that idea. I like this question here. rdoyle65 says, what happened before Pat signals with previous staff, say from going back to Wanstead, Graham, and Christ? Were recruit commitments only notified when they announced to you or social media and no one would know the player was committed? Yeah, the Narduzzi Pitt is it tweets, I mean, he created that phenomenon at Pitt. I can't necessarily say he's the first one to do it in college football or college coaching, but he created it at Pitt. Paul Chryst certainly didn't do that. Todd Graham didn't do that. Dave Wanstead didn't do that. But word would get out, though. Either a recruit would announce or word would just get out through sources. And look, I mean, it's, I think there are always sources who can share that kind of information to get it out and disseminate it. It's, generally speaking, if a recruit commits to a school, it's good to have that news get out. It's good to have some kind of publicity for that because it creates positive momentum among the fans. It gets people excited. It gets people looking forward to, it just gets people excited. I think that's probably the simplest way to put it. And that's a good thing for a program. And so I think, Dave Wanstead certainly understood that. I think Todd Graham understood that to some extent. Paul Chryst probably didn't care all that much, but I think there were other people around him who understood it. And so when the word needed to get out, the word got out. And sometimes that was just the kid announcing it. Sometimes it was, sources kind of, giving a tip to somebody like me or someone in my position or someone who does what we do. And then it kind of would go from there. But there was no... there was no, lighted sign in the sky that said, hey, there's been a new commitment. That didn't happen with Paul Chryst, and it didn't happen with Todd Graham. And Twitter was so nascent when Dave Wanstead was here that it really didn't happen. No, I shouldn't say it didn't happen when he was here either. So it's a Narduzzi occurrence. It's a Narduzzi event, and it's certainly come under a lot of scrutiny this week about, when Pat Narduzzi should send one of those things out. Should he send it out if the recruit's still going to take other visits? Or I tend to think that Pat Narduzzi sends out those tweets when he believes that the recruit is really committed. And I think he doesn't take the commitment unless he believes the recruit is genuinely committed. And so that's, it'll be interesting to see how that develops over the next few years. If Narduzzi changes his policy, my guess is he won't. He'll just, if he feels confident in the commitment, he'll send it out. And if he doesn't, he won't. This summer, I think when he felt confident in the commitment, he sent them out. And now there's been one that was undone before the recruit ever announced for Pitt, which is a relatively new occurrence, but not entirely the first time that's happened. We talked about it on the message boards earlier this week, but we'll see what Narduzzi, how he decides to handle it. All right, last one here. I like this question. LaRocca 2012 says, what are the biggest keys for continued success in the 2023-24 season for the Pitt basketball team? To me, I think it's like, I don't want to oversimplify it. I don't want to put too much on one guy. I don't want to, overstate this, but it's Dior Johnson. Like, you want the key to success for this season for Pitt basketball, barring, bringing in some high level, point guard who's going to run the show. I mean, it's Dior Johnson. He's got to be really good. If he's really good, they'll be really good. I'm really convinced about that. I like how this roster is put together. I like what they've done this offseason. I like the players they brought in, both the transfers and the high school kids. I like what they have coming back. I think it's coming together really nicely. The X factor, last year Blake Hinson was the X factor. This year the X factor is Dior Johnson. And it's all going to be about how he does. And I would love to be proven wrong, that somebody else will step up, or there's something else I'm not thinking of, or he could just be just okay and the team will be really good. Still, that'd be great. To me, they need him to play at a high level, and if he does, then it's going to I think they're going to be really good again. I think they're going to compete for the ACC again. I think they're going to make the NCAA tournament again. And it'll just depend on Dior Johnson being really good. So that, to me, is the key to success, to carrying over last season to this season and beyond, because he'll have more eligibility after this if he chooses to use it. So we'll see. But I'm probably going to keep hammering on that one. And I know I'm not alone in thinking it, but I'm going to keep hammering on that one throughout the offseason. And once the season starts too, probably, I would say. All right, we appreciate all those questions. We got more questions left over, so we'll get to those next week, as we always do. If you want to contribute your question to the Morning Pitt Mailbag, go on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com and put them in the mailbag post. Post your questions in those threads, and we'll get to as many as we can every Friday here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Thanks so much for watching these videos this week. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoy hanging out and taking your questions and doing all the other things we talk about. Moving into July next week, so it's going to be it's a new time of year, but that means we're just 1 month away from the start of training camp. So here it comes. Look out. But thanks for watching the videos this week. Make sure you check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. And then while you're here, like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hope you had a great week. Hope you have a great Friday and a great weekend coming up. We will catch up with you again on Monday for the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.